Hey, and welcome back to the Saltworks podcast. Some of you are listening to this like you always have, and others of you are seeing this for the first time, so maybe it should be a welcome to the Saltworks podcast. Today is our 50th episode.
So crazy.
Really crazy. You're probably going to have to talk louder than that because we're sharing a microphone for those of you that can't see us. We have just jumped into the world of recording.
Yes, ran a whole bunch of tests.
Yeah,
trying to figure out our microphone situation.
And somewhere between the aggregate device and the actual recording, both microphones are not registering. Shouldn't even be a new platform issue, but here we are.
No, yeah.
So we're sharing a microphone, but that's okay. So for those of you that are like, bless their heart, they don't know what they're doing, you are correct.
Absolutely.
Anyways,
yes.
So here we are. We're just going to go for it.
There we go.
So we have been talking about moving towards video for a while now.
Yeah.
Which is out of our comfort zone for a multitude of reasons.
Oh, 1,000 reasons, yes.
One, being on video.
Yes. Sitting here, actually being seen, not just heard.
Yes. But then two, I don't think either of us watch podcasts like we do listen.
I just listen. I think I've watched one, and relatively recent, only because I think I saw it on Instagram and I was like, oh, let me just go watch it. Did I actually end up watching it? Probably not. I think I ended up putting my phone down and listening to it.
Yes.
But it was neat to see.
It is. It is. I mean, I would probably enjoy it. I think it's just because podcasts to me fit under the bill of I can listen to this while I go.
Absolutely.
And so the idea of sitting and watching is not really, but that Andrew watches them.
Yeah. I think it's a personal preference.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to give the people the option.
Yeah. All that to say, we don't necessarily know what we're doing, but we have been making it a point to move towards video for a long time.
Yes.
And it's going to be a learning process.
Absolutely.
But we kind of just decided to go for it today.
We did. And here we are with our one microphone.
It's the funniest thing. If you don't normally watch, you need to go watch because it's really funny to see that one microphone sit in the middle. We do realize it looks ridiculous, but it's what we have today.
It's where we are.
Yeah. So,
our manna for today.
Our manna for today is the one. We hope to have 2 inputs by the next video recording. So for those of you that are brand new, we've introduced kind of a new thing in the Saltworks called Topic Tuesday.
Yes.
Which is basically what we're doing today.
Yeah.
But our topic is why the Saltworks? Mm-hmm. Why did it begin?
Yes.
Why did it continue? Why that name? What is our mission from here?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of our topic. So today for the 50th episode, the very first video recording, we hope.
Yes.
That remains to be seen. We thought we'd kind of do our mission statement story / mission statement. So,
Well, I think we should start with how did it begin? Where did that come from? I guess on your end and in your mind, what prompted that? Okay.
So, and the reason Lindsay is directing that question to me, because I started the Saltworks by myself, and then we'll get into the story of how we got together on this. We've been together on the ride of life for a long time.
Absolutely.
About 20 years. So,
since high school.
Yeah. What?
You say 20 years and then I say high school. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
it's been that long. Wow. It's alarming.
One and the same. But not senior year.
No.
Yeah. So
early freshman.
We're tacking on a few extra years there. But
yes.
The Saltworks for me. So I years ago, I don't want to make this story too long, was asked to work in ministry. Didn't apply, didn't see myself doing that. I was writing a book and am still writing said book. And the Lord's doing some great things in that. And that's a story for another day. But I had finished the manuscript. We had felt called to homeschool for a season. All of that was walking by faith. And then this offer to work in ministry came out of, in my mind, nowhere.
Yeah.
And so, but we prayed about it. It felt like the right move. And so I did it, loved the job, really felt like, I don't want to say I was good at what I did, but I felt efficient at what I did. Mm-hmm. It felt like worthy work, and it felt like something I could do if I worked at it. And so in that way, it felt like it was within my wheelhouse. And so I just had a lot of satisfaction in that job, I think, because coming from a stay-at-home mom, chosen, loved it. I chose to do it, loved it, loved every part of making that worthy work, even though that was a constant mind game. Because it does not feel like worthy work on a day-to-day basis. And that's where a lot of writing the book came into. But I went from doing that and having to work all the time to be like, no, when I'm wiping noses today, and even if we have tantrums all day long, I'm doing worthy work. And there's not a whole lot of satisfaction. Being a stay-at-home mom is thankless work.
Yes.
It's unseen, and you don't get to see tasks completed. Even things like laundry, because there's more right after you switch it. And
I'm living that one right now. We literally just had a conversation yesterday about me letting go of my task completion. It's a task in progress.
I know. It really, and it's hard. And I think that's why I don't love laundry, because it's like I'm wearing more work whenever I'm doing laundry. It's just never done. But so what I was doing wasn't more important. It just, I did get to see the satisfaction of a job well done more than raising children. Mm-hmm. Again, not more effective, not more worthy, just getting to see the cause and effect. Yes, that immediate gratification. And so, and things that like I genuinely enjoy and like do feel gifted at. And so all of those things. But then I felt like the Lord called me back to go back and be home again. And I didn't fully understand that at the time, to be honest. There was one event, one of our kids got really sick, and still has some things from that episode that we have to watch and continue to take care of. And but I mean, all is well, and it's definitely a praise from where it could be. But it was kind of, when I look back on my life and I've had moments of crisis, it tends to reshift your focus and reshift, where do I want to be? It just makes everything, it just puts a lens on everything, and you're no longer just kind of walking blindly through life. You're kind of like, okay, I just hit what's really most important. Where does the Lord have me going? And I've walked away from 2 really good jobs of really worthy work because of that. And it has nothing to do with being like, oh, well, that's not important, and that's not why I want to do that anymore. And everything to do with like the Lord uses those moments, I think, in our life of reshifting. Where is it that he has us going?
Absolutely.
Now, when I left that job, I had no idea what the next thing was. I just knew I needed to be home with my family, especially with there was a possibility of more health things, which, like I said, we're still having follow-ups from that. But I felt like I needed to be the one home watching that. And and so anyway, so I answered that call, and it was really sad because I did get a lot of satisfaction in that job, and felt really seen by the Lord taking that job. And so I have wrestled feeling, separating that event out and in my personal walk with the Lord, being like, no, he sees me and he has purpose, whether I'm a stay-at-home mom for the rest of my life or not, and all of those things. But when I went to a prayer walk one day, it was like a walkthrough for The Vine, which is a pregnancy and mentoring center here in town. And it was just beginning. And That's actually our very first episode. So for anyone who wants to hear more on that can be found in episode 1, but wherever you listen to podcasts. But Bethany, one of the founders, is one of my friends, and we're in life group together. And so naturally, Andrew and I went and we listened to her kind of tell the story of like, this is crazy, but the Lord's led us to this, and then on this day this happened, and basically laid out the story that we shared in episode 1. And then we continued to walk around the facility and just pray over different areas where women would come in and feel the presence of the Lord and begin that work in their lives. And so as we did, and they told us both the story and their immediate needs, I found myself being like, I wish I could post this on my blog, because I've kept a blog for a lot of my life, different ones. I've always liked to write and teach. And just, it was a hobby, but it was a hobby that I felt compelled to do, felt called to do. And so I was, just as I was praying, thinking I really would like to do a blog post where people can hear their story, because it just makes it real, and it makes people want to get involved, and spurs people on to believe, oh, the Lord really does still work that way here today. And so a lot of different things went into that. And blogs are great. They're still important. But as a blog writer, they're just not read as often as podcasts are listened to, for the same reason we talked about audio versus video. Yeah. You can listen to it while you're folding laundry. You can listen to it while you're driving. It's just a more immediate way to reach people in a busy world. And I don't see our world slowing down. And so I found myself thinking, I wish I could do that, but I don't know that enough people would read it. And when you really want a message out there, that is a part of your thinking. It's not about, oh, how many views can I get? It's how many people can I get helping with this ministry? And so it really was kind of neat the way the Lord used that, because had it been a message I had, I'm not sure I would have fought as much for it, because you have a lot of self-doubt, and I want my motivations to be correct and pure and for the Lord. And he really just kind of channeled those through me wanting the vine to be heard. And so I went up to her at the end of that prayer meeting and said, hey, this is a little crazy, but I think you're used to that after hearing everything you just laid out. Yes. And just kind of said, if I could get a podcast together, would you be my first guest? And she was like, okay, well, I have to say yes, because that's the path that the Lord has me on, but also, okay, you know. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, me too. So that's what I did. I went away and I thought, can I pull this together in a week? And it was not. No, it was not a week. It was longer than that. It was a couple months. But it was really just kind of crazy, because that pattern of like, okay, the Lord's called me to do this. Okay, I'm just thinking about episode 1. Okay, I'm just thinking about the next episode. Okay, I've got my microphones. Now what do I need to record it with? That daily bread, that manna that we talked about, that's how it started. And people will say, how did you start a podcast? I'm like, how you eat an elephant. One bite at a time. I will lose sleep over, well, how are we going to do this? And how are we going to do that? And then the Lord works things out. And we need just one microphone.
There you go. Here we are.
And then the name, my mom came up with. And I am not if Andrew and I are looking for, say, a new house, I've never been like, oh, this feels right. I'm like, how many closets are in here? You know, that dishwasher going to open and be on the way. Like, I just can think more about the function and the analytical side more than like the feeling. Working on that. And so I had to sit on that name for a while, but it really, like, even more than it sounding great or feeling great, it fit what I felt the Lord was calling me to do. The Saltworks is literally a place where salt is refined, if you want to think about like a place, a location, but it is also a slang term that is used for jobs that might be viewed as drudgery.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole purpose of the podcast was to give a platform and a microphone to someone, not just Bethany at the Vine, but to many people who might not write a book. They might not ever stand on a stage. They might not ever start a podcast, but they're doing this bold work for the kingdom of God in their corners of the world. And a lot of it probably does look like mundane. A lot of it might look like drudgery, and it might not ever be seen. But these people are walking out faith in the ways that we see it happen in the Bible.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, the Bible is full of these people in the Saltworks. They live next door to you, and you don't even know their story.
Right. Well, and I even think about the refinement, the first part of that. It's like in everybody's story, yes, you're hearing how they're living out their faith, but they all have some piece of the refinement process, the sanctification process to share in their story in the ways that the Lord has refined them. So
absolutely.
I think it's very fitting.
Well, and not a single person on here, myself especially included, the ringleader of this, is finished.
Oh, no.
I mean, a lot of times when we say, hey, can you come share your story? And that feels overwhelming, because it would to me too. I'm like, can you come share a story of how the Lord's worked in your life? Because we have our whole testimony, which is seemingly disjointed a lot of times. And sometimes we can pull out a thread. And then sometimes we have I have this one thing where the Lord turned around and I saw him work. And that's powerful and important to share too.
Absolutely. Well, and I mean, I think just the fact that our stories are ongoing too. I mean, you know. Yeah.
So that is how it began. So when you came, that was going into season 2.
Yes. Well, and I want to pause too, before we even jump into that, to say this encouragement to you, because I can remember us talking on the phone. I remember you telling me about when you were starting the podcast, and I remember thinking, that's so cool. That will be so perfect. Right up her alley. She'll be fantastic at this. But even more, and I know you're like, okay, sure.
That was not my feelings.
Well, that's how I remember thinking. That's what I remember. My thoughts on it were oh yes, absolutely, this will be so cool. But what I want to say is, one thing that I've always admired about you, and even continue to admire about you, is your faithfulness. And you just even talking about that piece of, okay, we were homeschooling, and I followed the Lord here, and then I got this job offer, and I followed the Lord here, and then he called me to go back home, and I followed the Lord here. You've always been so willing, and I know it may not always feel that way to you, and that's not to say there's not a struggle in there, because there's a lot of struggle. We do wrestle with the Lord a lot. But I think at the end of the day, what has been so cool to see, and really important for me to see, is that you're faithful anyways, and there may be a wrestling, but at the end of the day, you say, okay, God, this is what we're going to do. Yeah. And you follow that. And I think, I know for me personally, it's important to have that kind of model, in my own life, because mine has been a little opposite of that. Mine's been a little bit no, this is what I'm doing. And then the Lord's that's what you thought.
Surprise.
Yeah. So anyways, no, I think that's cool that, ending up here.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because it really doesn't feel like that. And it's funny. And I will mention this again as we go further into the vision now, which is still unclear. Yeah. And that's part of it. That's part of what we do. But that, I don't know what I'm doing. And I look at other podcasts. There's this new car effect, okay, of stepping into new places. And it's this, when you get a new car and you just know, well, I need to be able to fit 2 or 3 car seats now and ball bags or whatever, whatever those needs are that have expanded. I'm stepping into this new thing. And then you shop that, and then you find this new car that was only on your radar because of a need. as opposed to just picking whatever car looks
Right.
great, you know? And so you think, oh, great. And this, everything about this car is brand new to you. And then you get on the road with it and you're counting 20 other ones on the drive home. And you're like, never noticed that before.
Right.
Well, it can be like that when you step into your calling.
Oh, yeah.
Whether you're baking homemade bread as your calling, whether you're becoming a mom for the first time, starting a podcast, your eyes are open to, oh, a million other people are doing this.
Right.
Everyone else that's not doing it doesn't think of it that way. But when you're driving that car, you have different lens on. And so there's this new comparison game of like, oh, well, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing this. And regardless of who it is that I feel like is watching or that my motivations are trying to please man more than God, I've had to come back to, I have to be willing to seem foolish.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only way I can combat that want to look like I have it together, to look like I have it figured out, to look like I'm not out here struggling. I mean, we looked crazy to leave the school that Andrew and I both went to, homeschool, go back, be a full-time working mom, go back home. I mean, it just looked like I couldn't get my life together. Spoiler, I couldn't.
Right.
But it wasn't, I didn't make those decisions because I was searching for happiness. I made those decisions because he genuinely called us to do it. There was a lot of prayer and intention, and I still couldn't tell you all the reasons why he did that.
Right.
But it has grown that muscle to be like, well, I really can't justify it. I can't even justify it to myself. So I have to let that go.
Yeah.
And I just have to be obedient. And if that's what he needs me to do, he knows, and I don't need to know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I think that
would be the flips. Thank you for that encouragement. That's behind the scenes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, that's real too.
It's so real. It's so real. Okay. So when you were coming on, you moved back here.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you wanted to talk about even before, and you can jump straight into how you got involved with the Saltworks, however you want to. But also you've been a teacher for a long time and that was your calling and you were good at it. It wasn't just something to put bread on the table. You didn't even necessarily have that need. It was a calling that you felt called to do, and you've loved your students. You've kept up with a lot of them. You're getting to bump into some.
I know.
And so that's been a big thing leaving that. And so how have you seen God call you away from that, but also call you to something at the same time?
Yeah. So I mean, you kind of mentioned like, you know, when we go through a crisis, it creates like this just shift and perspective, a shift in what was important, what was, you know, I don't know. I have seen this year just a complete reframe of life for me. And the Lord has done a lot of like stripping away, but also building back in new ways, better ways. And so, you know, for me, it kind of felt like one big crisis, but like everything that I knew got stripped away. And my calling in and of itself in that too. Like, it didn't start out that way. But you know, as we neared the end of summer, like it became very evident that like, that wasn't it anymore. And you know, the cool thing in that was, I can look back now and see how like, you know, if you'd asked me 6 months ago, what would I be doing? It would have been teaching, like, and absolutely would have never, ever been sitting on a podcast being videoed. I can assure you of that one. That would have never even crossed my mind.
Yeah, same.
You know, wouldn't have even been on the radar. But I remember when I made the phone call to say like, hey, I'm not going to be able to teach. Of course, feeling like sad because there's a grieving of like, well, yeah, this is what I've been doing for the past 11 years. love my students, love running into some of those like first students, you know, now that I'm here in Target or the grocery store. They make me feel very old because they're like in their 20s, graduating from college.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, you're not that old. I'm not that old, right? Mm-hmm. But I can remember also having such a peace. And like, when I tell you that I haven't thought twice, I think that's only because of the Lord and because He is calling me to something different and greater, you know, in its own way.
Yeah.
And I guess even just thinking back over like the last, I don't know, maybe you could say 5 years of like my teaching career, I already recognized towards like those last couple of years of teaching, like there was a shift in the aspect of teaching that brought me the joy and the fulfillment. The students always were going to be a part of that, and they always were a part of that. But I found myself in a position where I was able to kind of like do my own curriculum, which is very out of the ordinary in the teaching world now. Everything is very scripted and very, you know, whatever. And, you know, as a teacher, seeing pre and post, like I did not like that one bit. But because I taught gifted, I was in a unique position to where I could kind of just like mesh things together and create. And it was more of the planning. It was more of the logistics, you know, that aspect, which I think is where my strengths lie. Like the Lord has like specifically put things in me, sometimes to a detriment. He's put those desires, and they have, you know, in some ways taken over, taken control. But I don't know. I can just see how like in the midst of the crisis, like He was already like preparing me and pushing me towards something that He knew about, that He knew I would be shifting and moving a different kind of role, that I was very unaware of, obviously. But like, I can just like trace that back and see like, okay, in some ways you were preparing me for a shift anyways. And I don't, you know, I wouldn't have recognized that previously. And so, I mean, I don't know if we want to even get into like where we started kind of the alignment or whatever, but you asked me to go to a conference. You know, I went to the conference. I was like in a place of just feeling stuck. I mean, literally just like, all right, God, you have stripped me of everything, literally. I think I used the description of like, feeling like I'm sitting in a room or in a house and there are no walls. Like there is nothing around me that I even recognize. You know, it was even to the point of like, okay, I'm in a new place, literally a new house, literally, you know, my kids, whatever, my job, like it just felt like everything that I used to identify myself had been removed, which is a terrifying place to be. But also working towards that trust of like, okay, if you are taking all these things away, then I know whatever you have in store is going to be better and for my good and for your glory. And, you know, I can see that even in the midst that like, that is the case. Because also if you'd asked me even 6 months ago, if you'd asked me a year ago that I'd be doing something with my best friend, like what? No, because literally on our the last topic Tuesday, we talked about how we've never been in the same place at the same time.
We've never been like, even in high school, we weren't in the same grade. We weren't at the same school. Like we didn't even start in the same place. You know?
So here we are, which is crazy.
And it's still hard to get to the studio at the same time.
It is. It really is.
We are in the same town.
Yes, but that's good. So at least there's that.
Baby steps.
Right.
Manna.
There you go.
Well, okay, so, and you're going to have to fill in because you remember some of the things that I don't.
Yes. Right.
A lot of moving parts, but I remember there was a breakout session at that conference that was for podcasting and writing. And because I had like orchestrated the plans, you were like, well, I haven't signed up for a breakout.
Yeah, and I even remember you saying like, okay, well, they like maybe you showed me where to find the list, and like I was reading through, and I'm like, I don't know. I kind of just sat in it, and I was just thinking like, none of these really sound like anything I care to go to. And it's kind of ironic because I remember it got to the point where it was time to break out. And I was like, you know what, like, I'm just going to go with you because I don't know, I don't have where else to go. Like, I don't, you know, whatever. And I remember thinking in my head, well, if nothing else, I can sit there and I can take notes so that Hallie can just like soak it all in, you know, like listening, which is funny because like, that's one of the first things I've done is like during the sessions, like jotting down like things that are said. And but like, that was my thought process was like, well, I mean, I don't know anything about podcasting or, you know, whatever, but at the very least I can write, you know, stuff down that maybe would be helpful or, you know, whatever. So that was my train of thought.
Well, and I was just, this is something I have to combat all the time with writing my book, with speaking, with podcasting. I can feel alone. Yeah. And I can sit down and tell Andrew all of my fears and he can be like, hey, I will help you do this and that. And he'll listen to my talk or read my chapter and whatever. I mean, it isn't that I'm actually alone. Right. It just is like this deep-seated fear that I have. I have a strong connection with Peter walking on water. Yes. It's very close to my heart. And it's that feeling of looking down at your feet and thinking, what in the world have I done? And then remembering, oh, wait, I didn't step out here on my own accord. I'm not alone. Right. I'm staring at my own feet instead of who called me. And so a lot there, but that is a thing that I can feel a lot. Well, so my perspective going into that breakout, because one of the hosts, there were two of that breakout. One of them is my favorite podcaster of all time, Annie Downs. And I don't think I've ever, well, I have met her once randomly. Yeah. That's a different topic. Just adding a bit. But anyway, but we didn't know each other. Right. We still don't know each other. Anyways, but I have just listened to her podcast. Her podcast is what made me fall in love with podcasts because in a season where I was at home with littles all of the time, it made me feel like I had a place at the table and that I had adult conversation and that even though like my circumstances look like remaining and sometimes withering away, my spirit was renewed through being a part of that podcast because like my mind was being renewed and I was being encouraged and I was being in the Word on seasons where there really wasn't a 5-minute time for me to open my Bible. Right. Because I had multiple kids that napped at different times. Yes. You know, I mean, just different. That's a real thing. Yes. And so that podcast ministered to me and the whole idea of podcasts became big to me. Never thought I would be, never was in my wildest dreams that I ever even think about doing that. Right. I don't know what I thought. I guess I thought somebody knocked on your door and was like, hey, we'd like you to do a podcast. Never crossed my mind that people started their own podcasts. Yeah. I don't know what I thought would happen. But I just thought these people were chosen by someone. And you have to be chosen. You have to apply and be approved. Right. Not how it works. You can start a podcast if you'd like to start a podcast. But anyway, so just wasn't even a thought. And so we were getting to go to her breakout on podcasting and writing, both of which I'm doing. Yeah. Didn't have my book deal, but was still moving towards self-publishing and thought, great. Tell me all of the things. Yeah. You know, I'm getting to sit down with the guru in my mind. Yes. So we go and sit down, and it was great. It was great. But it wasn't what I was expecting because maybe the questions asked, I don't know, but all of it tend to lean itself towards the logistics side of podcasting and monetizing and ads and networking. And I was like, what are you talking about? Right. I have 2 mics and a kitchen table. I have a laptop. Yeah. I drag an unwilling participant. I ask them questions about their life. Yes. Edit it myself through GarageBand because that's all I know how to do. Yes. And then submit it through this app that I have. Like, I don't even, what are you talking about? And so I went in being like, man, this is going to be awesome. And I left feeling really discouraged. Yeah. And it had nothing to do with, they were so encouraging. Yeah. But they just were experts and I was just nowhere close and they had teams and I was just me. And I just like that was so overwhelming. And I don't even know if we talked about that there, because my manner is to shove those things down deep and suffer in silence until later.
Yeah, but I mean, even sitting in there, I think on my end of it, I was like, oh, well, she's already doing all that stuff. Like, that was my brain. It was like, oh, we've already got that under control. Like, that part, yeah, check, and check. And I can remember, and I wrote this down in my journal. It was like a couple of days later when I was like kind of praying and processing some things.
Hallie had a very funny joke today.
I remember, and I don't even know if it was Annie, and it's terrible, I can't remember the other girl's name, but
Heather Thompson Day, maybe. I don't know. Yeah,
but I don't remember who said it, but I know one of them. It might have been Annie that said it. Was like, don't do this alone. And like, I remember thinking, because like I said, I went in with this perspective of like, I am stuck. Like, why am I where I am, Lord? What do you even have for me here? Like, what is next? Like, can we get the process started kind of thing, And then like just through the speakers of that weekend, like had a whole shift in my perspective of like, okay, I'm not stuck. Like you have me positioned here. And that was an imperative shift for me. And I remember sitting there when they made that comment and I kind of just started thinking over like, okay, what does life look like right now? And I was like, I mean, okay, like I could be that person. Like, I remember thinking like, okay, God, I mean, if you have me positioned here, like maybe you have me here to help. Like if nothing else, like I can help. Like I can, even if it's for a season, like I can, jump in and help.
I'm in the valley of shadow of death. Might as well record some things.
Yeah. And so literally, I was just like, okay, well, so I journaled, I prayed, and I was like, all right, God, like if this is really what you want, I feel like, I mean, what's it going to hurt? Like if I'll just offer. And like, I remember it was the exact same day that I really did spend like time that morning in prayer. And I was like, hey, I'm just going to call her later and be like, okay, look, I don't know if you need this, want this, if you want it to be me or you don't want it to be me, but like, I am available. Like I am here. I am in a unique position to like be able to help. I know nothing. And that means literally nothing.
Welcome
because until you had a podcast, I didn't listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
It just wasn't something I do. Oddly enough, like I'm more of a visual person, so you would think that I would watch. Maybe I should start that.
Yeah.
But until you had one, I knew nothing of the podcast world at all.
Yeah.
And really never even listened to them. Like I can remember probably you and 1,000 people telling me like, oh, you should listen to this podcast. I'm like, yeah, sure, I will. And then I never do.
Right.
I need to just start being like, no. That's a great suggestion. Thank you. But I probably won't. Now. Yeah. And I didn't even call you. You called me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, God. Like, here we go. And you were like, hey, I don't know. I don't remember how that conversation played out, but it was like, let's go to get a coffee tomorrow. Let's talk through this. And I was like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah. So on the flip side of that, like I remember her making that same comment about don't do this alone. And I was like, I know I'm not, I know I can call Andrew, Emily Jones, Erica Johnson. Like I have people I can call to say like, I need you to pray for me. I'm nervous about this.
Right.
They will come on and record with me. Like, I mean, I know I'm not alone, but logistically, like I felt like he was calling me to take that next step of faith. And I'm like, I literally can't take it.
Yeah.
Like, it's that needing your friends to pick up your mat.
Yeah.
Like there are times where you just need friends to pray for you. And there are times where you need them to physically move your mat. And I was like, that's where I'm at. I can't, I can't lift this mat myself. And so I was at that point of needing that sort of help. Whenever I can remember sitting on the back porch with Andrew and just saying like, I'm kind of thinking about asking Lindsay Stagg, like for real, to come on and help me. And I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what that looks like, but I just know I need that. And I'm just going to ask. I can pay her $0.
Yeah.
And so we talked about it and, there was all that. And then, I think I reached out to you and was like, hey, I have a recording this afternoon and I have an immediate need if you would come take notes so that I can use those quotes for social media. And but I'd like to get coffee tomorrow to talk to you about like really coming to help with the podcast and whatever capacity that means. I don't even really know what I'm asking.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't sitting here on video with you, that's for sure. At the time,
part of my job is dragging unwilling participants. I did tell you that. You were warned.
I was.
So, and no one out there is safe. When I called you, I was going to lunch with my dad and just said like, hey, can you come this afternoon? Just last minute thing, but also I want to talk to you tomorrow about this and like go into that more. And you were like, this is the craziest thing because yes, I do want to talk about this at coffee, but also I have spent time in prayer this morning and felt like the Lord led me that same thing. Yeah. And how affirming that was to me because I'm not too ashamed to ask for that favor.
Right.
But I do think it would have looked totally different had I felt like, well, I asked her and she's doing me this favor and I don't know how much I can ask, but like to see the Lord move your heart to the same thing at the same time. That's just affirming.
Oh yeah.
You know, and just evidence of the Lord working.
Absolutely.
But that same day, so I go to lunch and my dad and I are catching up on life and whatever and talking about this and that and whatever. And I mentioned something about, I mean, if you listen to any of the episodes, we always have something going on in the background on the Saltworks. It's a cat.
Yes.
A kid is home, you know, whatever. Right. Mowers in the neighborhood. I mean, just, you know, and it is what it is. Like, it's the charm of the Saltworks.
Right.
You know, is that Leo might make an appearance.
Yes.
But even though we haven't had video, you can hear him. And so, and I really wasn't complaining. I just mentioned something. And he was like, well, why don't you find a place that you can rent and I'll pay the rent for a year, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, again, I'm shocked at all points of this journey. Like, I think people think I have this great vision and like, I have a vision of the Lord doing his work here in Monroe and wherever else he wants to use it through the podcast, but I don't know what's coming next. I really don't. I'm just doing the thing that's in front of me. And never in my wildest dreams thought about having an office space and a studio away from the house.
Right.
And so I was like, well, okay, you know, and you and I had just had that conversation and I didn't even tell him that. And so the next day we began the search and a lot of things changed and a lot of things fell through. But here we are.
Yeah.
Months later.
Absolutely.
Recording.
Yes.
In the
studio.
Undecorated.
As I say.
But
with our one microphone.
But rented.
There you
legally.
Go. Yes.
Yes. With our one microphone.
Yes.
And so just I mean, one thing we joke about, but we walk by faith and not by sight. I mean, we do not know the next thing that's coming. We have goals.
Yeah.
But he has continued to change those and grow those in ways I could not have imagined or asked.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I know.
So,
and I think those, both of those scriptures are ones that have been pretty, that's what I'm looking for. Highlighted, I think, in my life this year. And especially where this is concerned, you know, and then even just like this idea of letting go of control, and it feels very foreign to me, you know, to step into this. But I don't know. Less scary, I guess, when you do it with somebody.
Absolutely.
Step into, I have no idea what.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So yeah, I don't know. It's been cool.
So the last thing to talk about is kind of, we've wanted to write an actual mission statement, which we haven't quite done.
No.
And I was thinking about that because like, it's not for lack of prayer. It's not for lack of trying to boil it down to one pithy statement. But it hasn't come to me. And I think that's kind of part of the point.
Yeah.
Is that the thing that we are wanting to spur people on to do, we're walking right now.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah.
And so, having said that, when you enter the Saltworks and you think about your personal calling entering into what we're doing here, the fact that we're at a studio and not just doing this on the side, what is your hope that the Saltworks will do for a person listening over the next year, whatever?
Yeah.
However you want to put parameters in that question. Yeah. What do you see it becoming?
I think for me, it's what is happening in my personal life translating into, okay, well, how can I encourage those around me? And I really think that's, to me, it's what it boils down to, is like spurring on the church, like spurring on believers to, we kind of talked a little bit about this, not just be genuine Christians, but to have a genuine faith. Like, and to, I guess, encourage that, like, it's not going to be, that's not easy. When we allow the Lord to refine us, it's not an easy process. Like, it doesn't feel good. Like, it's painful. It's whatever. I mean, I think about, we even talked about this, like Bill's sermon, not yesterday, but 2 days ago, just talking about like abiding in the vine and the spiritual fruit, like the pruning process and all of that, like that's a painful process and it's a hard process, but it's worth it. And it's with a goal of something better.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, just like the personal aspect of me kind of like looking back over the course of my life and thinking, I think I've always been a genuine Christian.
Absolutely.
And I've had points of walking by faith, not by sight.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I think I would say maybe more times than not, that's not been the case for me, or at least not, maybe I thought it was, but it wasn't really, like not really letting go of some of those things. And the richness of life is what, it doesn't mean it's not going to be hard, but there's a richness in
that abundant life.
Yeah.
He comes to bring not just life, but life in abundance.
Yeah.
We think of that as like abundant joy and abundant and
comfort.
Yes.
And, like it's all going to be comfortable. And,
the fullness of joy is in his presence. Like he is the God of comfort. I mean, those are true, but it's also in his suffering.
Yes.
That abundance is all sides of life.
Yeah.
It's the richness of every part of life. It's not just the good.
Yeah.
And how are we going to walk through that? You're going to walk through it regardless.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But it is richer walking it with him.
Yes.
For a purpose.
Right.
Than just surviving it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, when we think of, well, first of all, when you said the thing about the fruit and him pruning and how that's painful, what I've always loved about that verse is that it talks about, like, it's kind of the scary one that's convicting of, like, what does he mean by he's going to remove the ones that are fruitless? Like, have a season of being fruitless or,
Right.
But what I love is that it says those who bear fruit, he prunes.
Yeah.
He's pruning because you're already bearing fruit.
Right.
He's not pruning you out of punishment.
Right.
He's pruning you because you have shown,
right,
I want to know you and follow you all the days of my life. And he is meeting you there and leading you and in ways that there's no way we're not going to choose the pruning process. Let's be honest. Like, we're selfish creatures.
Yes.
And so he's taking that next step for us and doing that work when we just simply abide. But, we think of sanctification sometimes as, I don't know if this is quite right, but we can think of sanctification as becoming more meek and more gentle and more patient and more, and like, yes, like that is part of the fruit, but it's also growing in boldness.
Oh yeah.
It's also growing in courage. Like, it is fanning the flames, the gifts that he's already given you.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about that 2 Timothy 1:7 that I I think that's right, that we quote a lot about he has not given us a spirit of fear or timidity, but a spirit of power, love, and sound mind, or self-discipline, depending on your translation. We focus on that fear. We focus on sound mind and fear. But we forget the timidity and the power part. Like, part of that fear is that we're being timid about our faith when it should infiltrate every part of our lives. And for me, the Saltworks, what you said about spurring on the church and waking up to like, I want to live a genuine faith in a life of abundance. For me, he's waking me up daily over the last almost 2 years that the podcast has been going on, that we were placed on the earth in this hour to make his name known to all the nations. And if he hasn't called me to another nation, then how am I living that out right here in the Saltworks? Now, does that mean that every person's going to be called to full-time ministry? No, it doesn't. That's not what that means. It means that in your full-time job, how are you living that bold, genuine faith? How are you fanning the flames? Which is the verse right before he's not given us a spirit of fear, is fan the flames of the gift that he's already given you. You know? And so I want teachers for my kids that have genuine faith. I want doctors who are, giving me advice on what to do in medicine and whatever. I mean, how can all of us be encouraged to truly seek holiness in every facet of our lives? To not become complacent. I can live in this gray area over here as long as I'm teaching this Bible study with all of my strength, Well,
it's not compartmentalizing your faith.
There's no compartmentalizing it. How do you compartmentalize the Spirit of God?
You do not.
You don't. It doesn't go well.
No, it doesn't.
So I've heard.
Wouldn't know anything by experience there.
No, definitely not. I have. Yes.
Absolutely.
But to me, that is the Saltworks, both in, this happens twofold. When someone comes on, because we're asking them to share their story, what's the first thing that everyone wants to say?
I don't have a story.
I don't have a story. Ma'am, you have not been redeemed by the blood of Christ. I am the first one to say, well, I don't know. Who is Hallie? I don't know. What is my story? And that's okay if you don't know exactly what the Lord wants. I fully expect people to go away and pray, what parts of this do you want me to share? But to be walking through life and think, there's not one single thing I can tell someone to spur them on in the kingdom of God. If you have scripture hidden in your heart, then you have something you're passionate about. You've walked through something that he's sustained you. And so I didn't expect that side of things for that to be a part of a facet of the ministry. But it is. It's refining for me. Because when I'm saying things to them, I'm like, are you listening? Because you have something to say too, because that's always a fear as a podcast host. And so I get it, but it's also convicting to say, well, I have the Spirit of God, so I do think I have something to offer. And that's the reason I'm here. So if I don't know what that is, then I need to fan that into flames. Not with timidity, but with power, love, and self-discipline. I have to make myself. Through the Spirit of God.
Absolutely.
And so there's that side of it. And then there's the listener. We've all been on the listener side, whether you've ever been on the other side or not, where you're driving and that one statement will live forever in your mind. And Annie Downs, to bring her back into the conversation, recently was talking about this event. It's like a week-long thing that she was explaining, and I won't go into all of that, but she talked about it's not necessarily something that's going to change your life 180 degrees, which hopefully, yes, we want to make disciples. We do hope that, but I feel like our work in encouraging the church is our kind of primary listener. We're not necessarily trying to change 180 degrees, but if we can change someone's lives by 2 degrees, Because she said if you put two ships in the ocean and you change their destination by 2 degrees, or if you change their course by 2 degrees, their destinations will be different countries.
Yeah.
And so that one thing that someone shares, and that's the part that's just totally the Lord's. I can't plan that.
No.
My job is not the results. It's just the obedience.
Yeah. I think that's the case in all things. I mean, in the Great Commission in general, we do not control the outcome. We just have to be obedient.
Yep.
And He does the rest. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
All right.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add that I didn't?
I don't think so.
It's enough manna for today.
That's enough manna. Yeah. Enough manna.
I love it because how many times in the last month, much less 6 months, have we said it is what it is?
It is what it is. That has been our life. The life phrase.
True. Yeah.
That started back in college.
I'm sorry. Did I say 6 months? I meant 20 years.
I was about to say. That started way back when.
It sure did. Well, it was
different. It was. Whatever happened. No, it was whatever happens, happens.
That's not the right thing.
No, not it.
That was unsanctified.
That was.
But the sanctified version is it is what it is.
I like that. There you go.
And there's an acceptance to that.
Yeah.
That's not a willing participant of whatever happens.
Right. Oh, goodness gracious.
But what's so funny is manna means what is it? Like when Israel, when it fell, they were like, what is it? And that's what they called it.
I mean, hey,
manna.
There you go.
What is it? It is what it is.
It's appropriate. Yep.
Yeah, it is.
What it is.
This is what happens when you do a podcast with your best friend.
It is.
We digress so quickly.
Yes.
Well, thank you for coming.
Yes.
Again.
Of course.
For a Topic Tuesday that was brand new.
Absolutely.
Unorganized.
It was. And here we are.
We made it through.
We did.
And thank y'all so much for listening in. We hope you have a great week, and we will see you next week on the Saltworks.
This is my story. This is your story.